90% of the civilization you touch could collapse in just 1 week if the narrow gateways of the ocean are strangled. Take a look around your room right now, because the chilling secrets behind those 100,000-ton steel giants are about to completely transform your perspective on survival. Take a second to look around your space. From the phone in your hand and the laptop radiating heat to the coffee in your cup or the silk in your clothes, there is a 90% chance they were not born where you live. Before reaching you, they endured a journey of tens of thousands of miles across the ocean, facing waves as tall as 10-story buildings and straits more dramatic than any Hollywood action film. Welcome back to Planet Expedition. We often talk about the internet as a miracle connecting the world, but in reality, it is these armored steel ships weighing hundreds of thousands of tons that truly keep this civilization from falling apart. Imagine a terrifying scenario. If tomorrow all vessels on the ocean stopped moving, then in less than a week, supermarkets would be empty, power plants would go dark, and the world would fall into a total shortage crisis. This is not a distant warning, it is the naked truth of an extremely fragile operating system. The maritime industry is not just transportation, it is an economic ecosystem of a scale that makes any superpower hesitate. This is a place where standard units of measurement become meaningless. You might think airplanes are the pinnacle of trade because of their speed, but in reality, planes are just tiny couriers compared to these ships. Roughly 90% of global trade volume is moved by sea because of one ultimate rule: pure economics. To transport a t-shirt from East Asia to North America by sea, the cost is measured in pennies, whereas by plane, you would spend several dollars. The sea provides a natural highway that requires no maintenance, allowing steel giants to carry massive amounts of cargo that no other vehicle could dream of. The dominance of the maritime industry is also expressed through a haunting symbol of power: the steel shipping container. Right now, there are about 20 million of these iron boxes floating across the oceans. They are the massive army keeping the global economic blood flowing. If you count every container in the world, the number could reach 60 million. If you lined them all up, we would have a massive steel bridge wrapping around the Earth's equator more than 5 times. But why can a simple iron box change the fate of all humanity? The answer lies in absolute standardization, turning every seaport into identical neural nodes. And if you want to know what the world economy will look like tomorrow, do not look at the stock market full of speculation. Look at the Baltic Dry Index, or BDI. This is the true barometer of humanity, measuring the cost of hiring ships to transport bulk goods like iron ore, coal, and grain. When the BDI rises, it means factories are hungry for raw materials and construction sites are booming, signaling a grand expansion. Conversely, when this index plunges, it is an early warning of a looming global recession. The maritime industry does not follow the economy, it is the scout for every financial fluctuation of mankind. Today, Planet Expedition will take you on a journey to discover shocking truths where geographical bottlenecks can choke an empire and how map-based thinking is reshaping the prosperity of each of us. Before we dive deep into the terrifying secrets behind those deadly straits, I have a small question for you. In your opinion, what factor truly determines a nation's wealth in the modern maritime era? Option A, owning abundant natural resources and a vast land area. Option B, owning a strategic geographical location at bottlenecks and the ability to connect deep water infrastructure. Please comment your answer A or B below. The answer at the end of this video will completely change how you look at the world map. But to achieve the smooth operation of those steel giants you just saw, humanity had to endure a grand maritime journey spanning thousands of years, where dreams of conquest were written in blood, sweat, and technological breakthroughs that overturned every normal rule. The maritime industry did not evolve in a peaceful straight line, it is a series of proud and reckless leaps. Let us go back in time to the 15th century, when the world map was still a collection of fragmented pieces full of gaps and curses about sea monsters. At that time, tiny wooden caravels and galleons, powered by wind and the desperation of sailors, began to redraw the planet's boundaries. This was the age of discovery, the first time in history humans realized a harsh but powerful truth: mastering the ocean meant holding the fate of the world. Empires like Portugal, Spain, and later Great Britain built their prosperity not on land, but on oak beams and billowing sails, connecting eastern spices with American silver, turning the ocean into the first global trading floor. However, if one had to choose a moment that truly gave birth to the modern world we live in, many economists would not choose the day a plane took off or the internet was born. They would choose April 26, 1956. That was the day Malcolm McLean, an ambitious truck driver, watched the ship Ideal X carry the first 58 standardized steel boxes out of port. Before this milestone, unloading a ship was a manual nightmare lasting weeks, where hundreds of workers had to carry every sack and crate on their shoulders slowly and expensively. The appearance of the simple steel box called a container created a massive electric shock to the veins of trade. Unloading costs immediately dropped from nearly $6 to just 16 cents per ton of cargo. This shock collapsed every geographical barrier, allowing a factory in Southeast Asia to sell goods all the way to New York for a shipping cost sometimes cheaper than a local breakfast. The container is not just a box, it is the box of salvation that ended the era of poetic but cramped harbors in the heart of cities like London or Manhattan, making way for massive industrial complexes located in strategic spots with deep channels enough to welcome uninvited guests, the new generation of megaships. The human thirst for conquest never stopped at wooden ships or silent iron boxes. We have witnessed a technological arms race in engines to turn objects weighing hundreds of thousands of tons into wave-riding athletes. Today, hidden deep within these ships are the largest diesel engines on the planet, as tall as a 5-story building with tens of thousands of horsepower. Each stroke of its piston, with a diameter larger than a double bed, consumes hundreds of tons of fuel every day just to ensure your phone or shoes arrive at the warehouse on time. But the pinnacle of maritime pride must be the ships that never tire, icebreakers and aircraft carriers powered by nuclear energy. With a tiny reactor core inside, these steel monsters can operate continuously for 20 years without visiting a single gas station. The image of nuclear ships crushing ice 3 meters thick at the North Pole is not just a symbol of technical power, but proof that humans are willing to use nuclear energy to force the ocean to obey our desired route. From the physical strength of men carrying sacks at old ports to the wind power of expedition fleets, and now the power of nuclear fission, the maritime industry has come a long way to turn the impossible into the obvious. Every technological step comes with a profound change in geopolitical thinking. As ships become larger, faster, and more independent, the world map shrinks, but it also creates new centers of power. Humans have corrected geography and tamed the wild waves with steel and atoms, but in that rapid evolution, we have accidentally created new throats, where just a small disturbance is enough to paralyze this entire grand supply chain. The evolution from wood to nuclear has brought prosperity, but it has also placed humanity into a new game of power, where geography is no longer a distance barrier, but a strategic chessboard full of deadly traps that we will decode right now. The evolution from wooden sails to nuclear power has helped humans bridge the ocean gaps, but the expansion of trade scale has accidentally pushed us into a harsh geographical paradox. The more large ships we have, the more fragile the world becomes when forced to squeeze through narrow gates. To understand the modern maritime map, you must discard the mindset of a flat and vast ocean. Instead, see it as a maze of invisible walls with throats only a few dozen miles wide that hold the fate of all humanity. Geopoliticians call these choke points, strategic bottlenecks where geography not only determines the flow of goods but is also the ultimate card on the power chessboard of superpowers. Look at the Strait of Malacca, the narrow stretch of water between the Malay Peninsula and Sumatra. At its narrowest point, it is only about 1.7 miles wide, yet every year more than 100,000 ships pass through here, carrying a quarter of the world's traded goods. For East Asian powers, Malacca is like an oxygen-breathing tube. If this tube is blocked, their economies will fall into a state of clinical death within weeks. Why do shipping companies not choose another path? The answer lies in the iron law of maritime economics: distance is money. Detouring through other straits not only extends the journey by thousands of miles but also consumes millions of dollars in extra fuel. Geography has forced nations to crowd into Malacca, creating a strategic dependency that gives any nation sitting next to this strait an immense power in international relations. If Malacca is the economic throat, the Strait of Hormuz is the energy heart of the planet. Wedged between Oman and Iran, this is the only path for oil from the Persian Gulf to reach the world. About 20% of global oil consumption must pass through this narrow water every day. Here, the narrowness of the strait, with the narrowest point being only about 21 miles, makes massive oil tankers extremely vulnerable targets for any political disturbance. Iran understands this very well and has used the geography of Hormuz as the most effective deterrent against Western pressure. A blockade of Hormuz is not just a nightmare for stock markets, it is a global financial crisis that no bailout package could prevent. This fragility becomes even clearer when we look at the artificial gashes humans built with pride to correct geography, the Suez and Panama canals. If Suez connects the Mediterranean with the Red Sea to cut the journey to the east, Panama splits the American continent to connect the two largest oceans. They are miracles of intellect but also the most vulnerable bottlenecks. The Ever Given grounding in Suez in 2021 was a costly lesson, where just one ship lying sideways blocked 10% of global trade, causing billions of dollars in losses every hour. Or the record drought at the Panama Canal in 2023, which lowered water levels, revealed a harsh truth: we have built a global economy based on artificial narrow gates where just a small change in nature is enough to paralyze markets from New York to Tokyo. Understanding the danger of being held by the throat, superpowers are racing into a new contest, that string of pearls strategy. These are not merely economic projects, but efforts to reposition the map of power by controlling port nodes worldwide. From Gwadar in Pakistan to Hambantota in Sri Lanka, every location is calculated to ensure that one's maritime blood vessels are never squeezed by an opponent. Looking back at history, the British Empire once dominated the world by controlling a chain of choke points from Gibraltar to Singapore. Today, that logic remains unchanged. What we are witnessing in the South China Sea or the Horn of Africa is a continuation of history, where nations fight not to seize land, but to ensure the flow of steel boxes on the ocean never stops. Port geography and straits are no longer about loading cargo, they are about controlling the strategic death points of an entire civilization. As geopolitical bottlenecks become a puzzle for superpowers, humans are once again trying to solve fate with megastructures and sci-fi technological revolutions to keep the maritime blood vessels from ever clotting. In the world of giants, scale is not just an advantage, it is a condition for survival. For megaship-class vessels, entities described as horizontal skyscrapers, to dock, geography has issued a brutal requirement: these must be deep-water ports with a depth of at least 16 to 18 meters. If a nation's coast is shallow or silted by river sediment, that nation is automatically excluded from the global game. Shanghai took full advantage of nature's favor by owning deep-water bays protected by islands to become the busiest container port on the planet. Here, the Yangshan Deepwater Port is a true artificial wonder, where tens of millions of containers are handled every year by a fully automated operating system. Welcome to the era of sleepless megaports, where the line between reality and science fiction blurs. At next-generation ports like Yangshan or Rotterdam, you will see thousands of automated guided vehicles, or AGVs, moving busily in the dark without a single light or a single human operator. Robots do not need light to work, they are navigated by artificial intelligence with millimeter precision, turning cargo handling into a mechanical symphony without a missed beat. But a great seaport does not just need to look out at the ocean, it must have a solid hinterland, a hinterland behind it. Rotterdam succeeded by sitting at the mouth of the Rhine River, where goods can flow deep into the industrial heart of Europe by barge at a very low cost. This is the perfect combination of deep water to welcome motherships and rivers to distribute goods inland, creating an economic pull that makes all competing efforts from nearby ports hopeless. In an effort to cut emissions and find a more sustainable route, the maritime industry is witnessing a strange intersection: the return of the most ancient energy sources in the form of future technology. You might be surprised to see modern cargo ships today equipped with rigid sails up to 37 meters high made of steel and composite. These are not the cloth sails of pirates, they are wing sails using airplane wing aerodynamics to harness wind power, helping ships save up to 30% on fuel. Meanwhile, the green fuel race is heating up more than ever with the appearance of methanol and ammonia. Massive corporations have begun launching the first carbon-neutral ships, turning chemicals once considered toxic into a new driving force to reduce dependence on oil. Entering 2026, the first green ammonia refueling stations have begun to appear on the world maritime map, marking an era where steel giants can glide across the ocean without leaving any black marks of carbon emissions. The pinnacle of this revolution is the birth of autonomous ships, intentional ghost ships controlled entirely by AI and long-range sensor systems. Ships like the Geopolitics have proven that a 10,000-ton steel block can leave port, cross the ocean, and dock without a single human on board. This not only helps cut operating costs but, more importantly, completely eliminates human error, the cause of more than 75% of accidents at sea. Looking at Southeast Asian hubs, many nations stand before a golden opportunity by owning prime locations on the South China Sea. Deep water port clusters are perfect examples of utilizing depth to welcome the world's largest ships going directly to Europe and the West without needing a third country for transshipment. However, the geographical puzzle remains: how to connect infrastructure from these megaports deep into the interior when mountains or difficult terrain occupy much of the area. To truly turn seafront advantages into economic power, we need not only deep ports but also a seamless infrastructure nervous system, turning every ship arrival into a real growth engine for the entire nation. But behind those harbors bright with robot lights and nuclear-powered ships is another reality, much quieter and harsher, where flesh and blood humans face the cruel vastness of the ocean. A modern container ship, no matter how massive, only needs about 20 to 25 sailors to operate a 400-meter steel block. Amidst thousands of miles of salt water, loneliness becomes the greatest enemy, more terrifying than a Category 12 storm. They live in a miniature society where nationality and language must sometimes give way to shared survival. On the same deck, you will see a chef from the Philippines preparing dinner for a Russian captain or Vietnamese engineers working tirelessly in the scorching engine room. They share weak text messages when the ship luckily passes through cell service, the only fragile link to land, to family, whom they have left for 6 to 9 months at a time. The ocean is not just a highway for prosperity, it is also a massive, mysterious cemetery. It is estimated that about 3 million shipwrecks lie silent on the deep seabed, and not all of them are from ancient times. Even in the peak technology era, the sea periodically swallows steel giants with a terrifying silence. There are disappearances that remain unsolved to this day, like ships sinking into the Atlantic in just minutes without being able to send a single distress signal. Real ghost ships still exist, fishing boats or cargo ships with broken engines, where the crew has left or perished, and that soulless steel block just drifts aimlessly according to ocean currents year after year. It is a harsh reminder that humans, whether owning AI or nuclear power, are still just temporary guests on this blue planet. Human cruelty toward the ocean is also returning to punish the maritime industry itself. We have created a great Pacific garbage patch with an area 3 times the size of France. Ships passing through this region now face a new and ironic danger: plastic waste tangling in propellers or clogging engine cooling systems. We are turning our vital artery into a massive trash dump, and the very ships carrying civilization are becoming victims of that neglect. When you stand on the deck looking down into the deep water, you will realize the ocean never sleeps, and neither do the ships. They still move forward, carrying on their backs not just cargo, but hope, survival, and the silent corners of a civilization that would be very fragile without these grand voyages. Every item you hold in your hand has actually undergone a true survival struggle before reaching the quiet shore of the room where you sit. Looking back at the entire journey from sleepless harbors to distant geographical throats, we realize that this world operates on a massive network of connections that is also full of fragility. The maritime industry is not just about moving soulless steel boxes, it is the embodiment of human will in correcting geographical defects to create shared prosperity. Every ship gliding through wild waves, every canal splitting a continent is proof of a truth: we live in an era where mutual dependence has become a prerequisite for existence. A small incident at the Suez Canal or a political shift at the Strait of Hormuz is no longer the business of one nation, but the shared breath of billions of people across the planet. Maritime history teaches us about the power of positioning. A tiny nation like Singapore or Panama can move the whole world not because of size, but because they know how to turn their location into an irreplaceable transit point. It is a game of vision and standardization. In the non-stop flow of the ocean, where plastic waste threatens the propellers of megaships and loneliness surrounds long-distance sailors, we see both the light of future technology and the human corners that need empathy. Human civilization is like a massive ship, whether equipped with a nuclear reactor or AI, the final destination is still connection and sustainability. the greatest lesson from the World Maritime Map is, your starting position is not as important as how you define your value within a large system. Define yourself, like a nation owning a strategic bottleneck. You do not need to be good at everything. Find your own throat, a special skill or value that others need, and turn yourself into an irreplaceable connection point in your organization or community. Standardized thinking. For sustainable success, learn to containerize your work. Create standardized processes so you can easily transform, upgrade, and scale without consuming too many resources. Adaptability. When old routes are blocked, difficulties in life, be ready to look for new canals or apply new technology to overcome the storm. In your opinion, in your life journey, have you found a strategic strait or a unique skill that makes it impossible for others to replace you? Please share your perspective in the comments so we can discuss. And do not forget to click subscribe to support Planet Expedition so we have the motivation to continue making the next journeys to discover geopolitics and the amazing world. Thank you for accompanying us.